Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. We have a housing availability and affordability crisis in this country, and I'm especially concerned about young Americans and their ability to pay rent or buy their first home. I grew up in public housing, and I've been reflecting these days on the fact that I was able to buy my first home pretty young. But young folks coming along now, it's tough. Dr. Glaser, you're a Harvard economics professor. Are you concerned about what you're seeing in the economic data about young Americans and home ownership?
Thank you, Senator. I certainly am.
And go ahead.
I had added a paper of mine from the Journal of Economic Perspectives from 5 years ago, which looks at many consequences of housing regulation, one of which is a transfer of housing wealth from the young to the old. And we compared 2013 and 1983, since it was some time ago. 1983, there were plenty of 25 to 34-year-olds that had substantial housing wealth. That's just gone. But by contrast, if you look at the 65 to 74-year-olds or the 75 pluses, right, at the top end of that distribution, they are enormously wealthy. And so if you bought a home in Los Angeles in 1973, you have done spectacularly well, right? But if you're trying to buy a home in Los Angeles in 2025, you're not so well off.
1973, ancient history for young folks.
Indeed.
Folks that age. But
Indeed.
So I'm just talking about the college students I know. Massive transfers, seriously, of wealth, and a lack of the inability, particularly to pass wealth from one generation to the next. It's moving in the wrong direction, which has implications for all of us, regardless of our generation. This is a big problem that will require big solutions. And last year, we actually saw the largest increase in rental costs in a decade, while the share of first-time home buyers reached an all-time low. So tough pickings, whether you're a renter or looking to rent or buy. Georgia has the lowest home ownership rate in the entire Southeast. Ms. Willis, what are the consequences of high rental costs and lack of affordable housing on upward mobility and the broader economy?
Thank you, Senator. I think on an individual level, when people with low incomes can't afford housing, they're forced to make impossible trade-offs. So we're talking about trade-offs between paying rent and buying groceries, or medications, or investing in their children's education. But more broadly, I would say, that researchers have found that housing constraints have lowered GDP growth. And it by 36% over the study period. And in any given year, GDP was 3.7% lower. And so part of the answer, yes, is zoning reforms, as we talked about today.
So this is, and I'll let you continue. So this is not just bad for the folks who are buying homes. It's bad for all of us.
Absolutely. That's right.
Continue.
Absolutely. And, and again, zoning reforms are important. We talked about that a bit here today. But it needs to address the market failures that impacts households with the lowest incomes. And so because the market cannot by itself serve these households without federal investments.
What are young people or folks who are just trying to buy their first home, first-time home buyers, what do they cite most often as the biggest barrier?
2 words: down payment costs.
Down payment costs, absolutely. So I know that to be the case, and that's why I introduced the Rent Relief Act and the Down Payment Towards Equity Act with some of my colleagues. I think these are important bills that address the affordability issue around and the accessibility issue around housing, because when the private market fails to address our housing crisis, the government must help with smart investments. And so we get a healthy balance between the private and the public sector trying to make this work. Let me be clear, government can also get in the way, especially local government. Dr. Glaser, does our housing shortage have roots in restrictive local zoning regulations? You were beginning, I think, to talk about that a little while ago.
I believe that very strongly, Senator, and I've been trying to make this point for 25 years, and I think the problem has only gotten worse. And yes, the problem is fundamentally localities saying no to adding density, to adding homes, and they're fundamentally saying no to the American dream.
Thank you so much. This restrictive zoning often a legacy of Jim Crow era racism, let's be clear, is still a persistent problem. And it's a problem even in blue cities under Democratic leadership. And that's why I agree with the chairman and many of my Republican friends across the aisle that we've got to solve our housing crisis. And this will absolutely require regulatory right sizing. We'll never make a dent in our housing shortage. I think also in addition to that, without federal investments, like my two bills, as well as my bill with the ranking member to construct 3 million new housing units and lower housing costs for all. This is a serious issue, and I think we need bipartisan solutions. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Senator. I look forward to you and Senator Moreno working together on solving these issues. Senator McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Warren.